Welcome to the Source of Commercial Real Estate, where we talk to the experts in non-residential commercial real estate so you can grow your business, find a competitive advantage, and use real estate to live the life that you want. I am your host, Jonathan Hayek, and today I am talking with Mike Holdwick of Pro Team Commercial. Mike is an experienced real estate investor, and not only that, but he also has a background in engineering, design, and construction. He has a successful track record spanning over a decade in real estate. He's highly skilled in a variety of strategies in commercial real estate. He's done the Burr strategy, flipping, land contracts, 1031 exchanges, cost segregation studies. He owns 5 commercial buildings, a short-term rental, totaling over 40,000 square feet. He manages over 25 tenants. He's a licensed engineer, real estate agent, and has a portfolio worth $3.5 million. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jonathan. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This is a real pleasure to be with you today.
I am really looking forward to this. I heard you on the Best Ever conference, reached out to you, glad to the Best Ever podcast, reached out to you, glad to have you with me today. And I really connected with your story. And so I'm just really looking forward to diving into your story a little bit more. So why don't we start out with you telling us about your background, how you got started in real estate, and what your work looks like today?
Absolutely. Probably just start out with a little bit of my personal background. So, born and raised in Metro Detroit, the suburbs here in Southeast Michigan. I actually still live about a half hour from where I grew up. And I grew up in a very hardworking family. My dad was a construction worker, road builder, working nights, weekends, pretty much every hour he could work, he was working, and my mom was a hairdresser. So very much a blue collar family. And I went to college and studied civil engineering. So when I graduated from college, I got out. That was 2006, and I started working for an architectural and engineering firm. And designing airports, and that's actually still what I do to this day. I still have a W-2. I work 4 days a week now instead of 5, and do a lot of the real estate stuff that you just talked about on Friday. That's my day off to do real estate, and nights and weekends sometimes, of course. But yeah, that's kind of my background. I have a wife and a couple of young kids. So I'm just a normal guy. I check every box on the normal guy bingo card. I like craft beer. I drive a pickup truck, so we can go on and on.
Mike, tell me about kind of what got you interested in real estate after, starting a career in civil engineering, designing airports, which I think is super cool. How'd you get started in real estate?
Yeah, good question. When my wife and I bought our first house, we were 4 or 5 years out of school. And that's right when Zillow kind of launched, and you got to go back to that time. That's when a lot of these flip shows were on HGTV too. So we were watching that and doing a house search, and I really enjoyed it. It was something that once we got into it, it really spoke to me. So we ended up buying our first house, believe it or not, the week that Fannie and Freddie declared bankruptcy in 2008. So my my real estate career started out a little rocky because I was, I guess, questioning the decision at that time because the housing market was melting down for the older listeners that remember that time. So fast forward about 4 or 5 years, we did a lot of renovations to our house, and we were expecting our first child. And my wife and I kind of decided that that wasn't our forever house. We wanted something with a little bigger yard and a little better neighborhood. And at that time, a lot of people had banked up credit, and that created a need for a lot of renters, and renting prices for single family homes were high. And just based on my cost of the house, the principal interest and maintenance, and what it would rent for, the numbers penciled out. And being a numbers guy, I kind of was like, well, let's give this a try. I'd been watching television shows and knew some people in investment real estate, but just figured we'd take a chance. So we started renting out our first home and became kind of landlords by default.
And eventually you transitioned to the non-residential world. You didn't take the normal path of then buying a duplex and a fourplex and an eightplex and syndicating multifamily. You took a different route. I know your first non-residential deal was a medical office building.
Yeah.
Can you go into some detail about that deal? What attracted you to it, and how that went?
Yeah. So after I rented our first house for about 5 years, I thought I was the smartest guy in the room, and this was 2018, 2019 timeframe. I thought that single family residential prices were getting high, and I kind of like was starting to think that we might be at the peak. And by that point in time, I had developed a relationship with some people who own commercial properties and was getting busier at work, busier with family, and just saw a path for me in commercial real estate to number one, scale my portfolio. Because when I looked at how many houses I would need to create that pipeline to financial freedom and passive income, there were just too many properties that I would have needed to buy to get there. And I saw some more scalability in the commercial side of it, but I also saw more time efficiency. I saw it easier to manage commercial properties with, triple net leases or double net leases, and dealing with business owners was more attractive to me versus dealing with, families and rentals and, people living in a house 24 hours a day versus a business being in a suite 8 hours a day. So I think there were just, multiple things that spoke to me in addition to, your tenants fixing up and actually adding value to the properties that we own. So I kind of added all that up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to transition out of the residential space and I'm going to venture into commercial, and we'll see if I like it. So it was, kind of dipping my toe in the water with that first deal.
You were not the only one in 2018 to be thinking that the residential housing market was overheated. I remember flipping houses in that time period and having lots of conversations with real estate agents about how, expect a crash. Look at the market cycle. It's been, 7 to 9 years since the last cycle, and we're due. So you're definitely not alone on that one. So tell me, that first deal, the medical office building, how did you get the confidence to pursue the non-residential stuff or this medical office building? Because there were, even at that time, there were a million books and podcasts and resources available to learn how to buy a duplex, but almost nothing to teach you how to buy a medical office building. So what gave you the confidence that you could pull it off?
Yeah, I think it was my relationship with my now business partner, Larry. So we own Pro Team Commercial together. At that point in time, I had met him through a mutual friend, and he was just working as a commercial real estate broker. So I'm the type of person, being an engineer, that really likes to understand something before I jump into it. So I probably asked him a million questions, and he probably hated my guts at that time, but I needed him to paint a picture of what it looked like to own and operate a commercial property versus a residential property. But once I guess I came to understand what that looked like, and the fact that the tenant paid the taxes on that property, the tenant's responsible for most of the maintenance, they're responsible for the insurance. It like checked all the boxes, and I was like, to me, it actually became a no-brainer. At that time, I was like, this is going to be way easier than owning a residential property.
Can you walk me through that deal? Did you buy it vacant or occupied? Were there expiring leases? What was the business plan with it?
Yeah, it was a risky purchase, as I came to find out in retrospect. I think I was just naive enough to
Hmm.
not know that at the time, but the numbers were great, and I'm a numbers guy. I chase the yield, I chase the deal. I'm not asset class specific. I'm more looking for high yield because my goal was scale, and I was willing to take a few risks. So how it went down was we put the single family residential house on the market, and it was a really hot market. at that time. So I actually had real estate agents calling me before the open house. I listed it for sale by owner on Zillow, advertised an open house 2 or 3 days later on a Saturday, and I had real estate agents just blowing up my phone trying to get their client in there because it was a very competitive market. So found a buyer, learned how to do a 1031 exchange, which I had never done before. I used the title company that I closed with to facilitate the 1031. And then, you know how that goes. If you've been there, it was a mad scramble to identify replacement properties and then eventually close on one of those. So it was a pressure cooker. It was a learning situation for me. But Larry just brought me deals. He understood what I was looking for. He knew that I wanted high yield, something that was hands off, and this was one of the three properties that we identified for our 1031 and ultimately closed on it. But at the time, it had an expiring lease, so I think the lease went a year and a half out from what my closing date would be, and the thing that gave me confidence to close on that building was the arrangement was it was a medical practice. It was owned by some of the prior partners in the medical practice, and some of them had moved on, some of them had actually passed away, but the business had been there since the 1950s. So it was a long-standing business, kind of a pillar in the community, great location, great neighborhood. And, the way I looked at it was if this tenant's not going to be in there, then I can find somebody else, because there was good demand in the area and the numbers were astronomical. I mean, they were paying $6,500 a month at that time for a building that I paid $440 for. So I brought 200 grand in equity into it through the 1031 exchange. So I was going to be able, the way I looked at it, pay for half of the property with the remaining lease. And then if I needed to re-tenant it, you know what? That's a risk I was willing to take.
Why do you think the property was priced the way it was? It was like a 1.5% deal on a on a net lease. It's a no brainer to me just based on those numbers. So why do you think was it mispriced or was it in a shady area or why do you think it was priced the way it was?
No, I mean, the location honestly couldn't be better. This is one of the nicest suburbs in Metro Detroit, on the main thoroughfare. So it's a, divided highway, tree-lined streets, kind of like a 1950s vibe to it. It's very like Americana, old school, great neighborhood, very walkable. I can't tell you exactly why. I think it was the expiring lease. I don't think it was overpriced. They had it listed at 480. We got it down to 440 through, negotiation and a little bit more in diligence with a few issues. So I can't tell you why. I kind of had the same mindset. I'm like, I can't understand this, but I'm going to take the opportunity and run with it.
And a single tenant property?
Yeah, single tenant. The check comes straight from the medical practice corporate office, so it's a direct deposit. They pay the local taxes directly too, so there's nothing out of pocket there. So, as far as security goes, a radiology practice, pillar of the community, been there for 6 or 7 decades. Yeah, there's a lot to like about that tenant.
And at the time you bought it, there was 18 months left on the lease. So
Yeah.
what ended up happening when that lease came up for renewal?
Well, being in the business I am for my W-2, we do a lot of client service, right? We work with public administrators and we have a lot of one-on-one client relationships. So that's, something that I'm good at from a practice standpoint. So really wanted to try to just cement that relationship, right, with the people who operated the radiology practice, the administrators for the medical practice, and then the lead physician there, because he oversees the day-to-day operations and just make them comfortable with me, right? And I was overly generous, I'd say, and probably offering to perform maintenance, to be on site, and just wanted to, I guess, make them comfortable because they were transitioning from a situation where their medical practice kind of owned the real estate. So they had understandably reason to be wary potentially about, some guy all of a sudden owning it. So I didn't want to be a bad landlord by any stretch of the imagination. I was all in on making that relationship work because I knew if they renewed, it was going to be worth my time.
So your hope was that they were going to renew. You weren't trying to get rid of them in favor of a better tenant or increased rents. You wanted them to renew.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're still the tenant to this day. So that was 2019. We're here in 2023, and I have another 18 months. They've renewed twice on 2-year leases. So I'm still riding that wave.
Mhm. What have been you had? I think you alluded to before that you were maybe a little naive going into this deal. What have been some of your biggest takeaways and lessons from this one?
Jeez, that's a good question. I don't know that this deal has necessarily taught me too many hard lessons, if you know what I mean, because it's been smooth. I've clicked really well with all the people over there from a relationship standpoint. I think the biggest lessons just come in like tenant renegotiations, knowing when you have an expiring lease who the decision makers are in trying to ease their concerns about reasons to renew potentially, and then also partnering if they want tenant build out, or you need to give a little bit too. If they're going to renew a lease, they're going to try to leverage their position if they're renting from you to try to get some improvements out of it, which I've conceded some of that. But it's all been worth it in the end. But overall, this has been a smooth deal, so I'm happy about it.
Do you feel I've had some of my early deals just be so great, and later on you realize that they don't always go that way. Do you have any feeling of like, oh, it was some beginner's luck, or like why can't they all just be like this?
Absolutely, yeah. If
Like,
I,
could
if
I
I
have
could
10
just
more of
find
these,
this every day,
please?
yeah, just bring them to my inbox every day, and I'll close on every single one of these, right? So I think there is some of that, but I'm the type of guy that likes to leave no stone unturned. So through the diligence, we met the people, and I really got that gut feel, right, that this was going to be a winner. But not all my deals have gone that well.
So let's continue on. You've got several properties in your portfolio. What else do you own? What does your portfolio look like?
Yeah. So, present day, I own 5 commercial buildings. So there's the medical building we just talked about. There's 2 professional offices. So these are like neighborhood offices. Think the building down the street from your subdivision that has the insurance company or the financial advisor or the attorney. One's a 10 suite office and one's a 7 suite office. Um, I've got a
Wow.
light industrial building, which is 9,800 square feet, and it's a pre-engineered building, so pretty much just like a tin shell with a concrete slab and a heating unit in there. And we actually have a food producer in there, so they import spices from India, blend them, and sell them organic on Amazon. So it's food production. They've got some pretty heavy equipment in there. And then I own a strip mall as well. So it's a 3-unit strip mall with one apartment above it. So all in, that's, yeah, about 25 tenants. And I actually have another building under contract right now, which is another medical office building. So that'll be 3 new tenants if we close on that early next year.
A really diverse portfolio. You talked earlier about how you're kind of asset class agnostic and your portfolio backs that up. I have to ask you about managing your properties
Mhm.
and also maintaining your W 2. It probably helps that you're 4 days a week in your W 2. And you'd mentioned that Fridays are your real estate days. But talk to me, talk to listeners who might be managing a W 2 and also want to develop this real estate portfolio. So, do you manage? Does your partner manage? How does that work out for you?
Yeah, it's all self-managed. So I guess I'm the guy that can speak to people who want to scale real estate with a W-2 because I know there's a lot of people out there like that. And I've done everything the hard way. And I've learned the lessons along the way, so I can be a valuable asset for lessons learned. And the systems and the scalability have changed over time, right? When you have one single tenant medical building as your first one, that's pretty easy. You can do that on a spreadsheet. You can do that all yourself, and if you need to make a call on your lunch break, you can do that. But as I started to close on the multi-tenant buildings, the office ones specifically, there was a need for scale. And the cool thing is there's a lot of great software out there. I use Buildium. I know other people use Appfolio and, similar softwares. They're not that expensive for what you get. And, I really leverage the ePay options on there. So really tried to offer my tenants a way to pay electronically so that I'm not getting checks in the mail and I'm not chasing payments. And there's like automated reminders. So great tools there, a lot of bang for your buck. But then also the maintenance requests, right? You have 25 tenants, and I don't know how many furnaces I own or how many toilets I have, but it's many. And stuff goes wrong. That's just the nature of owning property. So I've really tried to encourage them to use those tools. And I have a virtual assistant that helps me manage most of that system. So she's been a lifesaver for me. I onboarded her about a year and a half ago, and that just changed my life. So anybody out there that operates a real estate business that doesn't have an assistant or even a VA, she's based in the Philippines, you need to take that next step.
Wow. I mean, I'm really impressed, Mike.
Thank you.
I mean, you have an admirable portfolio. You're juggling a lot. Um, I want to ask you about your two professional office buildings because those two properties stick out to me as one being 10 suites and one being 7 suites. You've got 17 tenants between those two
Yeah.
buildings. So tell me about how managing those two properties is different or uh, yeah, is different than say the single tenant medical office building
Yeah.
or the single tenant industrial property that you have.
Yeah. Well, I love these properties, number one. And it starts with the relationships that I've met people. Actually, got to learned about using virtual assistants from a tenant I have. I've learned so much and developed such great relationships with the business owners that I have in those properties. So that's been a real kind of hidden benefit, and I wanted to mention that. As far as managing those properties, I think that's really why I needed to adopt, that software suite, right? Because there's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more leases. These properties are on anywhere from 3 to 5 year leases, right? So if you have 17 tenants, when you just look at the numbers, there's going to be 2 or 3 of those that turn over, and they're occupied by small businesses, and small businesses are prone to scale and need bigger space. Small businesses are also prone to move around or even fold. So, every year there's a couple that potentially need to be transitioned and we need to find new tenants for. But I love the diversity of them because you have that many more payers, right? So if one is vacant, you really don't feel it as much as if a single tenant building loses its tenant, where all of a sudden you're responsible for all the taxes, all the maintenance, finding it. You have that vacancy, right? If you look at your income versus your vacancy, there's a lot more risk in single tenant buildings. So I think it's good to have a couple multi-tenant buildings just from an income security standpoint. And I'd be lying if I wasn't scared when COVID hit and the work from home, movement started. I was concerned if, these offices still had a place. But actually what I found out was the demand increased because a lot of people were down gauging from larger office buildings, the more corporate city center type stuff. But that attorney still wanted a place around the corner from his house where he could meet clients, put his business address on there, instead of having his home address. And so there's a lot of benefits just to have that separation between home and work. And these properties, have increased in rent. They're fully full right now. So I think it's been a blessing to have these. Yeah.
And, a lot of real estate naysayers will say, office, you have two office buildings, you have 17 office tenants. Is an office going in the toilet? What's been your experience in terms of finding tenants, filling vacancies, these office tenants sticking around?
Yeah. I think commercial real estate is a very diverse asset class. There's a lot of different types of property. We haven't even talked about multifamily or so many other property types within this broad portfolio. And when people hear office, right, that's what the headlines tell them, that office is dead. Nobody's going to the office anymore. But I think I was just fortunate enough to have the right type of office when COVID hit, the neighborhood type stuff, the stuff that's bite sized. People are paying anywhere from $500 to $2,000 a month for a suite, but it adds them a ton of value because I don't know if you've looked at the price of a PO box, but I actually have office suites that are less than a PO box. So when they're doing the math and they're like, well, I get the business address, I get the separation from my home so my dog's not barking when I'm on a conference call or my kids or whatever the case may be. Plus, I can see tenants there, so I have a separation and a privacy factor. There's a lot of benefits to that type of office, and I'm bullish. I'd buy another one tomorrow.
I recently sold a really similar type of property.
Okay.
There were like 10 or 11 different tenants in there, and all executive suite style. They were paying $500 a month, and like you, I saw a lot of demand for that kind of thing. People in that kind of situation found that they couldn't work from home.
Yeah.
It was too difficult, either with kids or distractions or whatever, and they wanted a business address, and or they needed clients to come in. They didn't want clients coming to their home, and so there's a lot of reasons that well located neighborhood professional suites, executive suite style office building can really be successful. So awesome job. Love your portfolio. I admire what you're doing a lot. Can you tell me about kind of your team and your partners? So you talked about your VA. You also talked about your partner Larry. So I'd
Yeah.
be interested just to hear about the dynamic between you and Larry, kind of how you divide up responsibilities, and how impactful having that partner has been for your business.
Yeah. Well, I think partnerships are great. Number one, I always didn't think that way though, right? I was kind of a little bit of a lone wolf where I was focused on building my real estate portfolio, right? So it was using my own money to acquire properties that are value add, trying to add that value, get them full if they were vacant or whatever the case may be. And then I think as I evolved in my real estate journey, I started to think more broadly about it and see the bigger picture and understand the benefit of partners. And Larry has a very different skill set and background than I do. He comes from a real estate sales background, so he knows the markets. He knows how to find deals and source deals. He knows all the ins and outs to get that thing to the closing table. And so he's kind of that front end, and I'm more the underwriter, the pro forma guy, right, at being the numbers guy. So I'm making sure that this thing kind of pencils out on a spreadsheet. He always makes fun of me about my spreadsheets, right? He's like, "Is the spreadsheet talking to you on this one?" I'm like, "Yeah, the spreadsheet's talking." But it's a great complementary thing. And then I'm more on the property management side and the operations side of it. So we've kind of divided the house, but then there were still gaps in our team, and that's really where the VA came in. First, Heidi, she's really does a lot on the property management side of things. So managing the building, making sure the money's coming in, making sure that all the service needs are met, getting the bills paid. So a lot of that busy stuff we've offloaded or automated to facilitate our scaling. And then more recently, we've added a VA to help us with social media. So, we're kind of at a point where we're turning the page and we want to get our message out there about our partnership and start looking for investors and taking that next step into syndication. And that's why I'm so happy to talk to you today, because I've kind of been living under a rock and like, with building the portfolio that I have, having two kids, navigating a global pandemic, there were a few things to worry about there, but now I finally find the energy and the time to kind of take that next step and be able to leverage the knowledge that we've learned through this real estate journey and the team that we've built and the property management systems that we have to help people, do the same thing that we've done, create a pipeline to passive income through real estate. So I'm all in.
And so, I mean, that's a great segue towards my next question, which is, what is your vision? I mean, where are you hoping your portfolio takes you? What kind of deals are you looking for? I saw on your website, you've got a great website
Thank you.
that, it talks about some of the deals that you've done. It looks like you've done some land plays, and just, all different kinds of stuff. And so, talk to me a little bit about your vision and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Yeah. So here's our vision. We want to be able to source properties, which I think is kind of in our core competency already. We know how to source them through Larry's knowledge in our systems. We've got VA doing cold call campaigns. So we've got a lot of incoming. We're trying to find off market deals, value add, exceptional deals. We've got a lot of automated searches set up. So we've got deals coming to us that meet certain criteria. Um, we've got a lot of relationships with real estate brokers. The most recent property that I found that we're in diligence on, that was brought to me by a commercial real estate broker who just knew a market really well. And when something popped up, it caught his eye and he thought of me because I just told him that we were looking. So, we want to have a lot of lines in the water to use a fisherman reference, and then as the deals come, we want to be able to offer those to investors, right? So we want to put kind of one and one together and make two. So people who are looking to get into the real estate investing game potentially, or people who are already in there but see a place in their portfolio for value add commercial real estate, that's where we're going to live at. So I don't hear a lot of people talking about this particular niche within commercial real estate. So we want to stay right there, but we want to talk to people. So if you're interested in learning or getting into that space, we want to talk to you.
And are you going to continue to be asset class agnostic, or are you narrowing in on anything in particular? Does any asset class kind of interest you more than others?
Yeah. There's a few that we love, so we'll probably still chase the deal, chase the yield because we want to offer, higher than average returns. But I love industrial. Larry's background is in industrial, so he kind of has a competitive advantage there. He knows some of these industrial markets down to the parcel number and the owner, because if you look at any given community, there could be 30 or 50 industrial parcels and they're limited and there's more use than ever because they're zoning limited, right? So you can only do certain business functions within these zonings. And with the onshoring of manufacturing, there's so many macroeconomic factors that are creating demand for industrial, and they're really not making any more of it. So it's just you've got two things from a supply and a demand standpoint that are going to buoy industrial. I think nationwide industrial is like 2 or 3% vacant right now, and the cost to build a new industrial building is like fourfold that you can buy an existing one. So just from a logic standpoint, those values have to go up over time. And the one that we own, I would buy 10 more tomorrow if I could. It's been an exceptional deal. So I love industrial. I love medical. Just when you look at the population dynamics and the need for medical services, I don't see too many physicians going out of business anytime soon. A lot of physicians want nothing to do with the real estate because they work so hard for the money and they have the money. So the last thing they want to do is worry about a leaky toilet. So they're great. So I love that space too. But I also love, professional office. If you can find good retail with a lot of cars driving by it, I've got a retail building with a dog groomer and a photography studio. Small businesses are doing great right now. If you have a good service and you can offer it at a fair price, you are doing good. And those people need partners because they don't have the money to invest in real estate, but they do have the money when they're operating their business to partner with people like me. And I could share you stories of just some of the most touching relationships that you could possibly imagine where somebody took a risk on me, I took a risk on them, and they've doubled their income and they've changed their life in that way.
How about markets? Are you still zoning in on the Detroit area and Southeast Michigan, or are you open to other markets?
I think we're open to other markets, but there's a lot of wisdom in sticking to where you have the competitive advantage, right? And and we're here. Larry knows these markets by the back of his hand. We know the good neighborhoods from the bad neighborhoods. And there are so many real estate parcels and properties out there that it's, even our little pond is a huge one. There's a lot of fish in it. So to venture out and try to compete with other people in the Sun Belt in some of these hotter markets when we can find yield here, it just doesn't make sense to me right now. So I'm not going to say that that's a never thing, but I think there's some Midwest markets that are really underrated right now, and you're starting to see that with some of the hot lists that are coming out for 2024. You're actually starting to see some Midwest markets pop back up because I think some of those other growth markets are overbought. So there's more value, coming into some of these areas with a little less population growth.
Mike, as we head to the tail end of our conversation, I have a few more questions for you. These are designed to be faster answer questions, but if you've got a great story or an example to go along with it, feel free to take as much time as you want. Mike, if you could 10x one part of your business, what part of that would that be and why?
Yeah, it would be the investor relationship part of the business. I feel like we're pretty well rounded in the other parts, and we have systems and we have competency there, but really the investor relationship part of the business is where I want to grow. That's something that we just haven't put that much energy to. It's not necessarily a natural strength of ours either, so there's a lot of learning there. I know nothing about social media. I've never had a social media account. I'm the guy that showed up to the party 15 years too late, so starting that from scratch has been interesting. So yeah, that's the next frontier for us is those relationships with people who want to invest in real estate.
Mike, what's the best deal that you've ever done?
It's actually the best and the worst deal I've ever done.
Great. Let's hear it.
Yeah, we would probably need a whole separate podcast to go through it because it was a 4-year saga that took me to the brink a couple times, some of the craziest things you could possibly imagine. But I'll try to give it to you in a nutshell. This this was an industrial deal that we were pursuing because at the time Michigan had adopted some laws for the cultivation of cannabis. So they had legalized for medicinal use cannabis, and every municipality, city, they all had the opportunity to opt in or opt out if they wanted to offer licensing and opportunities. So I think a lot of the markets throughout the U.S. are kind of set up that way. So one of the things that Larry and I were doing was we were trying to find these properties because they were huge value add, right? If you were in the green zone, it was 2x overnight. And our strategy was we partnered with somebody who owned a lobbying firm. So he was consulting with these municipalities to help them write their ordinances. So we had a great intel source. And he would come to us and say, hey, so and so market is going to opt in. You need industrial, and these are the parcels you can do. And then if there was anything listed, we were pursuing it. And if there was anything off market, we were cold calling, door knocking. So long story short, we found one of these markets, and I found a building on LoopNet of all places that was listed, and I called on it, and a lady answered, and I was like, "Hey, I saw your building on LoopNet. Are you still interested in selling?" And she's like, "What listing? What are you talking about?" And I said, "I'm looking at the listing right now." She's like, "We had that property listed 3 or 4 years ago, but it's not for sale." I said, "Okay. When can I see the property?"
Nice line.
And she said, "Well, let me talk to my husband. Maybe we would be interested in." So I don't know if this was a ghost listing or what happened, but it was a gold mine because it was a 9,000 square foot light industrial building, which would convert great to cultivation. And it also had a 65 unit self-storage business in the back of it. So it was an operating business. There was income on it, and it was 18,000 square feet of real estate in the green zone. And it was a snowstorm. It was snowing sideways. She called me back and she said, "Yeah, we might be interested in showing it." All right. I said, "All right, I'll be there in an hour." And I drove through a snowstorm. It took me 2 hours to get there. There's one of these advisories where they're like, stay off the roads. I didn't care. I knew what I had here. We walked through it. after the walkthrough, I sat in the guy's van and I said, all right, what's it going to take? And he laid out the terms. He said, I'll do land contract. It's 350. I said, okay, I can do 325 and I'll put 75 down. I think I said 50 and we got to 75. And, 3 days later, the deal was done. I had it under contract. And at that point in time, the municipality actually hadn't opted in yet. So this was all risk for me, but I felt good about it. I was going to their board meetings, their planning meetings. And long story short, got it under contract. And it took me 2 years to sell that property. But when we listed it, I asked Larry what it was worth, and he said 1.2. So cost basis, three and a quarter, 75 out of pocket, and we listed for 1.2. And within a month, we had a verbal offer for 1.1. And I kind of felt like I was holding a lottery ticket at that point in time. I couldn't believe it. I was in complete disbelief. As I came to find out, there's a lot of bad actors in that space. And I had a lot of failed negotiations. A lot of contracts fell through. I even had a run-in with organized crime, believe it or not. So there's just so many twists and turns to this. Eventually, I split the parcel, sold the self-storage separate from the light industrial, and I offered land contract terms because you can't finance these types of properties because of the use type, and got paid back over 2 years on that with balloon payments at the end. But together ended up selling them for close to $900,000. So I was 75 out of pocket and netted $500,000 or $600,000. So it was the craziest deal, the highest yield I've ever got. I mean, it's just taught me every lesson you could possibly learn in commercial real estate. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was nuts.
What were some of your major takeaways from that deal?
Well, I was pretty naive at the time, so I kind of viewed it like a residential deal where if somebody signed up to buy it, they were going to close. And that's not the case, especially in this use type. There were a lot of bad actors, a lot of flaky people, a lot of bravado and people misrepresenting what they actually had as far as assets go. So I learned how to underwrite the buyers, similar to underwriting a property. When you sell a property at that price point with that use, you need to understand who your buyers are. And eventually the buyer that I found, we just clicked. And I knew at that time, as the property had fallen out of contract 3 or 4 times, that he was the right one. He had a plan, he had the money, and I really lucked out. He was a great buyer. We still have a relationship to this day. But the intestinal fortitude that it took to know that I was holding a lottery ticket that was kind of a ticking time bomb, because with every passing day, that property was less and less valuable because there were more properties coming out of the market. So it was less scarce. And man, I really built a lot of fortitude with that deal.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
What's your top tip for finding deals right now?
I would say finding deals. My favorite strategy is having a lot of lines in the water, right? Like I talked earlier, there's a lot of great technology tools out there. LoopNet, Redfin, some of those real estate portals have really good filters so that you can really niche down and close your buy box down so that you know where you want to be, what you're looking for, the price point, and then let the deals come to you, right? So it's a passive thing rather than an active thing. So if anybody was looking to get started, I would just recommend setting up searches and have those deals come to you. Go and meet commercial brokers, not residential brokers, people that are working for like Century 21, Keller Williams. All those residential branches also have commercial specialists with offices, where they specialize in commercial property. Meet those people and ask them to bring you deals. Tell them what your buy box is, and they'll bring deals, because right now they're hungry to close deals because the commercial market's a little soft right now. And then VAs, cold calling, that's another thing that we use. I love all those strategies, and I think they're all important to finding value add deals, because if you're just looking at the brokerage sites, those deals have been passed through many people and many no's. So you got to kind of find them closer to the source.
Have most of your acquisitions been on market from LoopNet, or has there been another deal source that's worked out well for you?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. A couple have been on LoopNet, and I've used cost per square foot to find those deals. I'm looking to price it similar to the way people that price residential real estate. So I want a low cost per square foot, and then I can underwrite it with what market rent is there, right? So if you can get a building for $50 a square foot, and you know that market rent is 15, $20 a year, that means that your tenant's going to pay for that property in 2 or 3 years. That's a no-brainer. So just if you can understand those two simple things for any market that you're working in, you can be really effective on LoopNet. Off market is great through those relationships. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's how you're finding the value add stuff.
Finally, Mike, is there a book, podcast, or another resource that has been helpful to you that you'd recommend to other people?
Yeah, I'm a podcast guy like you, Jonathan. I feel like I've earned a PhD from real estate knowledge just through the Bigger Pockets podcast. There's so many to name. Your podcast is great. You do a great job. The audio quality and your ability to host is fantastic. So I want to affirm you on that. Um, Listen to podcasts, one that resonates with you. I don't think there's one in particular, but just go out there and find what fits with you, fits with your mindset, fits with your objectives, and find motivation to listen to it. And you will learn so much, and then you will gain the confidence to move forward. But the action part is the hardest part. So whatever's going to take you, what it's going to take you to get into that first deal, if it's talking to me, listening to podcasts, that's the key is you need to get into it. You need to take action. You need to feel supported, but that knowledge will really help you move forward.
And Mike, if listeners want to connect with you or reach out to you, where would you like to send people?
Well, like I said, I'm new to the social media game, so I'm gonna plug that first. You can find me or Larry and I in our business at Pro Team Commercial on Instagram. That's probably where we're most active. So we're sharing tips and tricks and doing some video series on just stuff that we're encountering, stuff that we're up to. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me at Michael Holdwick on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. So reach out, or if you want to email me directly, it's Mike at proteamcommercial.com. So yeah, like I said, I want to talk to people who are interested in learning and investing. That's why I'm here to give back.
Mike, this has been an awesome conversation. I know a lot of listeners are going to connect to your story. You are doing a lot of the things that people are aspiring to do. And so, sincerely appreciate you sharing your time and your story today.
I appreciate you, Jonathan. Thank you for the opportunity. This has been awesome. You do a great job. So thanks again. And, if we ever need to do a follow up once I'm further down the road, I'd be happy to do it. So I
Let's
appreciate it
do
so
it.
much. Sounds like a
Thank you,
plan.
Mike. And listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, feel free to reach out to either one of us. We love talking about commercial real estate, and we would love to talk to you. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, take care.